One of the very significant parts of our life is our story. It's the stories of who we are and what's transpired and how we live our life in relationship with others. So story is absolutely essential to the growth of society, to the growth of our life of faith. Absolutely essential. And stories share a great deal of communication. They pique our imagination, they exude sentiment, and they feed emotions. They often include essential facts, and they have the power to reach out and grab our attention. Right now, I'm in the middle of a good murder mystery, and it has reached out and grabbed my attention to early hours of the morning. What hasn't grabbed my attention is when the alarm goes off a little later. But stories, how important they are. Today we have stories. Stories that come out of Scripture that are so important for us to hear because they help to ground us in that life of faith, in that call to discipleship, that we have all raised our hands and said, "Count me in." Peter and Eliakim present us with a way to reflect on the significance of life and faith, inseparable to those who follow Jesus. Can't have your faith over here and your life over here. We are one in life and faith. Isaiah the prophet speaks to the people about the signs of the times in his time and what's going to happen and how Eliakim is going to be put in charge. Now Jesus in the gospel does the same thing, doesn't he? He speaks about who's going to have the power, the transfer of authority, and what that is going to mean. And so there's two questions that arise from the story and those interactions. And they're, what do we know and what can we expect? And with that transfer of power and authority, we have the first step. How it manifests itself, that remains to be seen. The important part in the how it manifests itself is to be seen in that relationship that we have with God. Paul, in his letter, he uses very persuasive language because he wants those listening to reflect more deeply on the content of what they're hearing, on the content of the story. And the stories that Paul tells reflect the content of the gospel. So here we are. We're hearing the gospel. We're hearing Paul. And that same invitation comes to us today to reflect more significantly on the content. Now, Paul learns that as he's out teaching, and he has grappled with and absorbed and owned and taken to heart that content, he knows that the logical explanation of the great mysteries is not as important as living them out. We can hear the stories, we can understand the stories, we can accept the stories, but it has to take root to be lived out. It has to be experienced in the life of the people, in the life of the church, in our life of faith. And so what Paul has also found is that in order for that experience to reach its fullness, it has to be grounded in prayer. It has to be grounded in prayer because that is so important for those who say, I believe. How can you say, I believe, if you don't have prayer? And so to be grounded in prayer helps us to make that statement, I believe. So I think this process that we've heard that Jesus introduces, Isaiah introduces, and Paul supports, it holds true for us today. So today, how do we seek out that wisdom that we need, grounded in faith, of course, so that our relationship with Jesus gives us the direction and the focus to embrace and meet up with the signs of the times in our world. Signs of the times in every generation. How does this help us embrace the signs of the times in our world and to meet those according to our life of faith, grounded in the stories and teachings of Jesus? Because how we do that continues to tell the story of the church, the life of the church, and how that life is nurtured and how it grows. Because each of us in our story plays an important role in that life, the life of the church. And as Jesus often says when he's talking to the people and he ends whatever it is that he says he wants them to know about, he says, those who have ears ought to hear. Those who have ears ought to hear, because we're listening to the story.